Good morning. This is Pastor Marvin Osborn, First Baptist Church of Birmingham, Ohio, and I hope you're well today. We're in Galatians chapter 1. You remember what we're going through. The Apostle Paul is rebuking the Galatians because they've allowed false teachers into the church. They've been swayed to a false teaching. Paul is rebuking them. He's saying these false teachers, if they deny the gospel of Jesus Christ, they are to be damned to hell. Have nothing to do with them. And so now Paul in verse 13 of chapter 1, he's going to begin to talk to them about his credibility, because there seemingly was some debate about Paul's loyalty. Was Paul there to please man, or is he there to please God? And where did Paul get this gospel in the first place? Paul says, I got this gospel not from men, but from Jesus Christ himself. And so verse 13, he says, for ye have heard of my conversation. The word conversation means lifestyle. He says, for ye have heard of my lifestyle in time past in the Jews' religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of God and wasted it. Paul was so zealous for God, although his zealousy was that of ignorance. He did not understand who Jesus Christ was. He was unsaved man, and as such, he saw the church as an attack on Judaism as a whole, and he wanted to eradicate Christians. So he was there when Stephen was martyred for the faith. He threw Christians into jail and wreaked havoc among the brethren, among Christians. He was feared. He was known for his zealousy against Christianity, and he said that, he goes, you knew this. You have heard of my lifestyle. You heard of me before I was saved. I had a reputation of persecuting the church. He said, and he goes on verse 14, and profited in the Jews' religion above many of my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly jealous of the traditions of my father. He says, in that whole Jewish hierarchy, among the Pharisees and so forth, he had risen within the ranks. He had the education. He was more dedicated to his faith than the rest of his peers. He loved God, and yet he loved him in an errant way, didn't he? And so he goes, and profited in the Jews' religion above many of my equals in my own nation. He goes, I was well known, not only by Christians, but I was well known among my fellow Jewish nation. Verse 15. But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace. He says, but in God's perfect timing, the calling of God on his life was revealed. And he said, God already knew when I was in my mother's womb that I was going to eventually turn to Jesus Christ. And he says, but in his divine plan, in his perfect timing, I became a born-again Christian. And you remember that story, don't you? That on that Damascus road, that Paul was headed to wreak havoc among the churches, and then he was confronted by Jesus Christ himself, and he was blinded by Jesus for several days, and he turned his heart to Jesus Christ. He was confronted by the Son of God himself. Verse 16, to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the heathen. Immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. He says, when Jesus got a hold of me, in his perfect timing, and when he got a hold of me, he set in his heart, he put the purpose for which he's being saved in Paul's heart, to preach salvation among the heathen, among the Gentiles, among the lost. Paul understood his mission in life. Just as he was zealous to persecute the church, to persecute Jesus before he was saved, after he was saved, he was just as zealous, if not more, for Jesus Christ, and to reach the lost for Jesus Christ, to reach the lost, to present the gospel to them. Isn't that amazing? And he was ordained, whether he realized it or not, from his mother's womb, and to receive Christ, just like you and I, and to serve him, just like you and I, except he had a divine calling on his life. He goes on to say, neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which are the apostles before me, but I went to Arabia and returned again to Damascus. He did not seek the apostles' approval after receiving Christ. Rather, he went to Arabia and later to Damascus. Why? I believe it was to restudy. In my opinion, he went to restudy those messianic passages in the what we know to be the Old Testament. He had to relearn everything he had learned as he was growing up. Remember, he sat at the feet of Gamaliel, and so he had to relearn. And now he was looking at those at the law. He was looking at the Old Testament as we know it through Christian eyes, born again eyes, and all of a sudden, I believe, the understanding of those scriptures came to life in him. All of a sudden, his eyes of understanding were opened, and he began to see that Jesus was the fulfillment of those messianic passages. And so he like all good Jews, had been waiting for the Messiah to come, and he didn't recognize him when he came until God got a hold of his heart. We'll leave there today. This is Pastor Marvin Osborn saying, God loves you, and I love you as well. And I'll talk to you soon.